Okay, good morning everyone. So today we are going to discuss about the identity, subjectivity, power, and discourse. So for my part, I will be going to discuss identity and subjectivity in linguistic stylistic. So we have here our objectives. Next slide, please. So our objective in this topic is to define and understand different aspects of the identity, subjectivity, power, and discourse. Another one is to discover the relevance of identity, subjectivity, power, and discourse. Next slide. Identity and subjectivity. So this is my part. So we will going to discuss about identity. So what is identity? Identity, it pertains to cultural description with which we emotionally identify and which concern sameness and differences, the personal and social. It is a process through unconscious system. So identity, mingod kitag identity, it pertains to the description of who we are. It describes of what is our culture, our norms, our preferences. So it simply means of who we are as a person. For example, me, my identity is I am a Filipino. I am a Filipino citizen, and that describes my culture as a Filipino. So as a Filipino, we have so many culture that reflects in our identity as a person. So it's also something like our identity shapes our culture, rather our culture shapes our identity. So we have here, it is a process through unconscious system. It means that we are binded to what is our culture, norms, status, and race, because as what I have said, that our identity, it reflects our culture. Makita ang ato ang culture as a person. When we go to another place or another nation, for example, USA or in Korea, when we go there, Korea, for example, Korea and Philippines, we have different language. So our language or our language, it depicts who we are, as who I am, as my identity as a person. So when unlike dito sa pagmuadto ka dito sa Korea, lahi naman din ang ilahang language. If you want to communicate to them, kinahanglan nga you will study their language. You will study their language, but despite of that you will know their language, you are able to speak their language. Makita gyapon ang imuhang identity as a person, as kung unsa ang imong culture. So next slide please. Identity in cultural studies. So it is the construction, because the discursive resources that form the material for identity formation are cultural in character. So in cultural studies, identity simply describes our culture. Iyag yung gina-describe ang ato ang culture. Dili na sila pwede nga mag-separate. Identity simply describes our culture. It identify our norms, culture, what is our status, sexual preferences, gender, or the thing that describes who we are. So next slide, please. Let's talk about the concept of identity. There are two concepts of identity, the self-identity and the social identity. What is self-identity? So self-identity is the verbal concepts we hold about ourselves and our emotional identification with those self-description. So it describes of who you are yourself as a person, your attributes, the entirety of who you are as a person. Me, I identified myself emotionally. Gingon dira nga our emotional identification, makita na to nga unsa ang ihang identification emotionally. And what are those description regarding of who you are as a person. Another is social identity. Social identity is the expectations and opinions that others have of us. So take note the word expectations and opinions. What are the opinions of others with regards to your identity? If other person describes you as a generous, strong, you are a bold person, that is called social identity. It is their opinion with regards to your identity. Sila, oy, si Christina, kuan man na si Christina, hilakon, or something. She, despite that she is so emotional, but she is a strong woman, a resilient woman. So that is called social identity, their opinions with regards to your identity. So that is the concept of identity, the self-identity, your identity as who you are, your self-identity, and what are the opinions, the thinking of others with regards to your identity. Next slide, please. So we have here subjectivity. So what is subjectivity? Next slide, please. Subjectivity can be described as the condition of being a person or the process by which we become person. So take note the word the process by which we become person. For example, as a student, I am dreaming to become a teacher. That becoming a teacher, that is called subjectivity. So because subjectivity is the process. So we have here the condition of being a person and the process by which we become person. That is how we experience ourselves. For example, something like you experience culturally, you experience criticizing like bullying, rejecting. So as you experience bullying, that condition, it constituted as the subject. So those are subjectivity. So next slide, please. Subjectivity in cultural studies. So for cultural studies, subjectivity is often regarded as an effect of discourse because subjectivity is constituted by the subject position that discourse oblige us to take up. So take note the word an effect of discourse. Subjectivity is often regarded as an effect of discourse because as you do discourse, it reflects of your person, of your identity, and the subjectivity, how you do discourse. So that's why subjectivity is often regarded as an effect. It is regarded as an effect of discourse. So because because we have different identity, experiences, background, cultural norms, beliefs, preferences. We are prone to subjectivity, or that's what we call stereotyping. So we have here in the next slide please, we have here an illustration. So as we can see on the slide, we have here the photo of, as what we can see, a man and a woman. So look through any women's magazine, what subject positions are constructed for women. So look through a magazine that we judge to be aimed at men. What subject position are constructed for men? Describes how such subject positions are achieved. So when we look at the women's magazine, we can say that it is women because it portrays of her as a woman. Matumakita dira nga unsa tumakita dira, it is a fashion. It illustrated the fashion of a woman. So that fashion, that is subjected or identified as a woman. The way she dress, those luxuries, the bags. That fashion, that is subjected as a woman. So when we look at a magazine for men, so it symbolizes strong, bold, sporty. So those symbolizes being strong, bold, sporty. That's subjected as reference or identity. References or subjected, it references or identified as a man. That is being strong, bold, sporty. That is called subjectivity. So in connection to stylistic discourse, identity and subjectivity, it reflects not in the choices of words. When we do discourse, in stylistic discourse, the choice, identity and subjectivity, it reflects the choices of words. So as identity and subjectivity, it influences us as we do our discourse. So again, identity is it is the description of who we are as a person, and subjectivity, it is the process of becoming a person, the process. Just what I have example a while ago, that as a student, I am dreaming to become a teacher. So that teacher is called subjectivity. So that would be all for my part.
Power and discourse. Next slide, please. According to Michel Foucault, power is based on knowledge and makes use of knowledge. On the other hand, power reproduces knowledge by shaping it in accordance with its anonymous intention. So it means that power comes from our knowledge, and with the use of knowledge through our language, our words, we gain that power. The power to influence, to persuade, and etc. Next slide, please. Power is used when it comes to differentiating the levels of power due to cultural and social characteristics that comes about through societal upbringing. The ways we think and talk about the subject influence and reflect the way we act in relation to that subject. So through power, it differentiates the levels of power among individuals, because we are diverse and we have different role to play in different context situation. So for example, in the classroom, if you are a teacher, then you have to be a teacher. If you are a student, then you are a student. So as we all know that teacher is superior and the student is inferior. So you have to know the I mean power differentiate the levels of power among individuals. So it depends on a situation. And it is because the way we think, act, in power, the way we think, talk, act reflects the level of power we have. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Discourse. According to Michel Foucault, discourse transmits and produces power, it reinforces it, but also undermines and exposes it, renders it fragile, and makes it possible to thwart. So, discourse shows the power, but the power to express, to expose something, but it can also be defeated. So, that's what it means for me. And next, discourse is an approach to analysis of written, vocal, or sign language use or any significant thematic event. So, discourse here means of a written or spoken communication to one or more people. Through discourse, you'll be able to analyze how the language is used in a certain discourse. For example, in a speech. So, you'll be able to analyze there how the speaker use the language to convey a message to his or her listener. So next slide, please. So we have here the classes of discourse. We have the descriptive discourse, narrative discourse, expository discourse, argumentative discourse. So first is this descriptive discourse. Wala na. Descriptive discourse is giving information about something happened, what happened in that certain discourse, in for example in a speech, what happened about that. So that's a descriptive discourse. And the narrative discourse, it's describing the series of events. So definitely it is a long discourse. And then expository discourse is let's go back to narrative discourse. I forgot to say that the narrative discourse, it's like telling a story to your audience. So for one of the example for that is in a television, in like telling a story about someone. So that's kind of narrative discourse. So you're going to analyze there how the words, how the story is conveyed using the language. So next is the expository discourse. It's the use of language to expose something, like in the news, diba? In the news, like what we've seen in the television, it's about giving details, information, trying to expose what is that issue is all about. So that's the expository discourse. And then lastly is the argumentative discourse. It's a debate. It consists of one or more parties supporting their opinions, their ideas. So that's a argumentative discourse. So next slide. So here are some examples of the discourse. First is in the film or TV shows. Excuse me. So in a film, of course, you can analyze there how the language is being used, how the writers use in the dialogue of the characters, and also in the advertisement, how the text, how the language is, I mean the font of the text, so it defines there the identity, the subjectivity of that certain discourse. And then also in political speech, how the speaker use his words, use his power to influence, to persuade the listeners. So that's one of the example of the discourse that you are going to analyze, how the the language work in that certain context. And then interview as well, so it also allows to, to analyze the the answers of kanang mga gina-interview nila, how they present themselves, how they persuade the panelists. So that's the examples of the the discourse. Now, to sum up everything, identity and subjectivity concerns to both. I mean, identity concerns both self-identity and and social identity. It is about a personal and social. It is about ourselves and our relations with others. And subjectivity is the condition of being a person, and in the process by which we become a person. So that is the identity and subjectivity. While here in power, it is the knowledge, your word, your knowledge, your language, that is your power, the power to influence, the power to persuade others. That's the power is all about. And then the discourse is the situation itself, like the speech in the classroom, the interviews in the magazines. So that's the discourse that you are going to analyze of how the language used in that certain context. So that is our report is all about the identity, subjectivity, power, and discourse. So thank you and God bless.